I've been wandering and pondering why Chat-GBT and OpenAI tell lies like they're going out of style. You've probably seen the videos of the artificial intelligence just making up lies. Chat-GTP, OpenAI stick to the cover story. We're on a globe. There's a such thing as quantum physics that allow us to split the atom. Come on. When the same thing happens to the United States and other mafia contingents, they shrug their shoulders like the artificial intelligence. Oh, I'm sorry. I made that up. Here's the real answer. Or you're correct. That's happening all over the world because this is a shared judgment. Conspiracy theories have sometimes taken decades to be proven true. You're going through that right now. My father went through it. I went through it, 67 years old. And took a long time for them to admit they faked the start of the Vietnam War. That there's such a thing as prison and Plantier where they're gathering information and computers because they've got an evil plan. Those things take decades, but ideas stuck to by people that were many times controlled opposition by the truth. There are people, I think of like Phyllis Schlafly, some of the Eagles Forum, big people in the homeschool movement, we don't need that women liberation, on the mailing list she was an informant. I don't trust anyone. I don't want you to, unless you find it in the scripture. Welcome everybody to Mudflood was Armageddon. The Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. If you put a comment, it might show up on the screen. If you like that, let me know. If you don't, it'll have to go. Here is your disclaimer, everybody, so I can show videos. I can say, ivermectin. I'm not a doctor. Go see the doctor. I guess I'm one of those rebels. I do have some pictures that aren't from the internet. Oh, get ready. So we're going to be covering a little bit of Gabrielle Gifford. She was like the girl, somebody shot a representative from Minnesota. This girl, though, she got shot point blank through the back of her head and survived. A 9mm exited above the left eyebrow. Wow. Okay, so there's the thumbnail. Why do they lie? It's not programmed to lie, but in this case and many others, it did. Why? It just does. Although OpenAI's amazing new chat box might refuse if you ask it to tell an outright lie, right? Sure, because it makes them up on their own. So these pictures, it's a new camera. It's kind of washed out, but we had an auto show today, so I went to take a few pictures. How about that one? Like I said, these are a lot better the sun is just so close here. Thought you might want to see some. Look at that one. It's just like sitting on the ground. My dad had a truck like that. He always wanted to fix it up, but he had to keep working. They even do look at that scroll work on these things take time, I think. Is that a swastika? Whole line of cars. Just get a look at them. Look at them sitting sideways. I'll show you those. I got some of them sideways. This paint job, it would have been nice if you could see it, how super detailed it is. There they are. Look at that. They're probably playing the same music that they played back in the day when they were going to Arby's. And I do remember when some of these cars were brand new. Look, there's Gabrielle Gifford. She got point blank shot right through the brain, and then she married a NASA astronaut, and together for a while now. And on her thing, 33,000 plus in that year. I just wanted to see what was in other people's algorithm. Now, we're going to be looking at this. This might, but they're showing it, and make it bigger. We don't need to see this stuff because they're trying to show something here. Let's see, instant pineal gland. Not much here. I was looking to say, what's on their algorithm that's not in my algorithm? I don't know if I saved it for there. The family jewels. The name of a set of report detailing illegal, inappropriate, and otherwise sensitive activities conducted by the CIA from 1959 to 1973. Bill Colby, director, he said, yeah, there's some skeletons in the closet. Wow. Supposedly they have it all figured out now. That's why they called it the family jewels. We're going to look at a couple of those Ian Carroll things. So the Mudflood, I think we're going to start pretty much with that. Look at that. Let you be rest assured that the mud flood was Armageddon, because everybody else is acting like, well, there was definitely a mud flood. And look at all these proofs. They're all over the world that they were not stupid people. I went to a demolition derby here. This is kind of a long introduction here, but so this is the winner, defending champion. It's a girl. Go. It looked fixed. I did. Now, they usually go in reverse a lot, but this is what they do. And you can see, I think I get a little bit of the crowd here. Pretty good crowd, about $20 a piece. Heavy into it, man. There is. Big, long introduction. One of their young and up and coming demolition derby drivers died, and they dedicated their race to him. So, Disaster by the Bay, finest they were ever built back in the gold rush. So I thought that was interesting. The finest buildings in Chinatown, I believe. This is Chinatown. They ate and slept below street level in a maze of rooms fed by underground tunnels. We know that. Is that a child yelling for help? Help. Mysterious spot in the region of the Golden Gate was Chinatown. This was a real over-engineered building. It was talking some weird stuff. In February 2000, Meet the Press, I believe. Yeah, we've already done that. So the comments, I guess they don't look that bad. Let's see what we got here. One Bible verse, Isaiah 28:10. For it is precept upon precept, line upon line, order upon order. Here a little, there a little, line upon line. New King James. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. And that's how come we have our Bible. It's how we have the New Testament, it's how we have the Old Testament. God knew that a lot of things happened. There's too many books to read. So there was a time, like let's pick it up. This is the last book of the Bible. They were falling away. Nobody feared God. It seemed like the consensus of opinion, the Sadducees and the Pharisees are probably the you here. You have said it is vain to serve God. What is the profit of our keeping his charge or walking as in mourning before the Lord of hosts? And now we call the arrogant blessed. Evildoers not only prosper, but they put God to the test and they escape. Verse 16. Then those who feared the Lord spoke with one another. The Lord paid attention and heard them. And a book of remembrance was written before him. And those who feared the Lord and esteemed his name, they shall be mine, says the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my treasured possession. And you are a temple. What's this? It says Trump. Oh, he doesn't look that happy, does he? This is the big military parade. They're sitting in the drizzle. That's not the way they do it in the other countries. They put them on a pedestal and stuff. That just looks cheesy. So here's somebody else explaining something they learned. And now, I mean, they have commercials, two commercials for different products, T-shirts. Is this? Oh, maybe this isn't Lunchbox, but I still think this guy sells stuff too. 70,000 almost subscribers. He's going to tell you.
And tunnels.
But you already know.
In fact, there are images that indicate that state records are stored there. Now, what's actually in those records is up for anybody's guess.
They want to keep it with the new ABCs, and that's anything but Christ. They don't want to. They admit there's a way to make money off of this. Something weird happened. You can't deny it. They call it Mudflood for some reason. I like it because it reminded me of Noah's flood.
They also have a very great library. Now, of course, if you've seen the interior of the Iowa State Capitol, you know that these images do seem to be, well, quite a contradiction from what you'd expect to see, because they're formal images that show you a.
So without the Bible, you know this. It's the same old, same old.
Structures that are deemed mud flood structures or. So that starts with the Iowa State Capitol. Now, there's something to be aware of. Because of the is a, how shall we say, very, very controversial theory, or maybe it's not, or maybe it's just something that's hard to ignore. It should be noted that there are a lot of images that may have been intentionally modified. Because as usual,
and I like this guy. I think he does a good job as a college type thing. He's one of the guys that you can learn a lot of things from. But it's Bible world. This is a judgment. We're the ones that are going to make it.
From Dallas. As a construction worker, I can firmly attest to the lack of safety precautions. Oh, even today,
Here's
I
a
thought
look at this
efforts
stuff.
there.
Come
It's
on,
also shown
Mormons.
that there
That's
are
John
lower
Jimmy
levels to
stuff,
attain.
right?
And the explanation would
Wonder
be,
where
well,
he
of course
learned
it
that.
shows lower levels. It's just part of the foundation. Yes, we always have these very extensive foundations. Yet when we look in the detail behind them and we look at some of the decoration, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense for why we have such immense decorative detail.
It doesn't make any sense how a con man can join the Freemasons and then they can plot a new religion that founds countries that are turned into territories, then states, all the while, saying black people were spawned by Satan until 1977. Then they had to change that, or they were going to take the Donnie and Marie Osmond show off of the television and people would have revolted
On what's supposed to be underground and what was supposed to have been planned from the start of the construction of a structure as its foundation to be underground. That's where we run into one of those little inconsistencies and we have to question. By the way, for those of you not familiar with Salt Lake City, you got the tabernacle there on the other side. And the less said about the tabernacle in the movies Art Oz, the better. Now, does anybody know where this particular location is? This has been featured before by a couple other alternative researchers and other explorers.
Half Moon Bay.
Mr. Something else. I saw the aftermath of a landslide. Ah, yes, it is well documented. Yeah, I mean, whenever you have these events happening, they are terrifying because they can be very destructive and frightening. Center West has it, California. Oh, right on the money there, 50 wheel, Half Moon Bay.
I already saw this. I would have never known that. How would I remember Half Moon Bay?
Tend to go with. That's what we tend to have.
Okay, so he also explains how heavy they are. This one he doesn't get into the fires, but the pictures, you had to see this.
Horsepower with just people with shovels and nothing better to do with their time. Now, yes, you may recall there's an interesting account with Kansas City. Oh, that's good, Leo. Doesn't look like they're hiding anything at all. No, they're all just standing there. You think they'd be constantly working and digging with their shovels, don't you? But that's exactly what they want to show us. They want us to think, oh, yes, there's a picture of it, so we have no reason to question it. I mean, is this even located in?
By the time the honkies got there, it looks like the Native Americans had given up and just said, you know what? We've dug it out enough. This is good. Keep it like this. I'm tired of digging all my life. Here's cool. Hey.
Everything does seem staged. So let's get on the move on here. Gully Town, a grid of man-made canyons lead from the riverfront, late 1860s and early 1870s.
Gully Town.
So again, Kansas City. Yes. And so here we have a building, and this isn't one of these cheap wooden buildings would expect.
No, it is not. What's that?
Just by interfacing with it. And here we have our preview of Union Station. Now we're going to take a special look at Union Station. You may recall that's that very impressive train station that was.
This is Satan using obviously some sort of machines to plan this, write it out, and then tell them to stick to it, no matter what. Because that's not them building Union Station. This is probably 15 different pictures and who knows what they embed in it. I think I see Jabba the Hutt.
Constructed there early 1900s, circa 1911 to 1914.
Sure.
Has the really, really tall ceilings, which everyone loves to tell me it's just because they kept buildings cool. Okay.
They wanted to play basketball at lunch break.
Next to this existing bluff, is that what really happened? Very, very interesting. Now, what do I think could have happened? Could there have actually been a bluff there? Could they have built?
So there's no denying the world is ready. The world makes money. This is its own cottage industry. Sure, most of the world doesn't know about it, but the narrow road does, and a lot of other people who have been on the narrow road and look at it and say, hey, there's something there. This is not a nothing burger. And Atlantis sounds good, and Nephilim sounds good, because that way I can think God in the Old Testament was the evil bad guy.
And then using the steam digger to dig all this out. Okay. I mean, is that really what they're doing? Are they actually moving entire hills or bluffs? Or again, are they just clearing up some of this dirt that just happened to be compiled near these buildings? I don't know. It's up to you to decide what to think on it. You also have other strange images from Omaha that show a lot of overgrowth. And
Ooh, that's where Offutt. There's got to be a lot of tunnels under there. That's where I think George Bush and Cheney went after 9/11 to be safe. It's the spies. That's where the spies are. It's also where Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, Mutual of Omaha.
oddly enough, a very arid terrain. And it doesn't look like it's winter here. Now, when I say arid or desiccated, I know people have gotten confused by that, so I'll just spell it out. It looks like it's a freaking desert. Now, yes, if you go out further in the plains, there's less water if you go to the west of it, but it's just very, very odd that we always get this kind of appearance with these cities, especially in the Midwest. And keep in mind, we're right next to Iowa, which is the breadbasket of the Midwest, where they've
It is freezing cold.
the foundation, then they darn well didn't build it into the ground, did they? But that's what the record says they did. So I don't know.
So the mud flood.
These images,
Armageddon.
this is 1906, and 2 short years later, you have this in 1908.
Why
Really?
not?
Really? You One Socket Truth Seeker. I appreciate that. Sorry I missed that. I'm not getting the alerts in the best fashion. And thanks. All right. So what does this all mean? What do we have all this evidence and what does it tell us? And why does it matter? Do you think that we actually have sufficient evidence of a mud flood occurring? Yeah, there you go. Once ad rather than straight ahead. Good point there.
What?
Is there other evidence in other places across the land? Well, we've looked at 3 cities here so far in the United States. I just thought we'd look at a few quick examples here because it's not just in the United States. And would you be surprised to know there's even some questionable things that have occurred in places such as the Bronx? I know you're surprised just because of that rumble in the Bronx for doing that, but let's see what else we got for a little bit of evidence. It's just a coincidence that it looks a heck of a lot like what we just looked at in the United States in Seattle, Kansas City, and Omaha. Yes, it's a coincidence. All right. More dramatic examples. Oh, yeah, look at this. Boy, I'd hate to see my Honda go up or, my old Jeep go right into the mud. That would be what if they were taken over by some other force or even by some corrupted force and their technology was used, going back to the concept of the organ. When was the organ invented? That's interesting. To generate this frequency and blast the land with this frequency, and it was actually an artificially induced liquefaction.
All right. Well, here's the deal. I like Mudflood was Armageddon. I like Mudflood because what we had was Noah's flood at least. We had a flood before that because this world was void, and it's pretty much a consensus of opinion. There was a recreation. Elohim's, Dr. Heiser, they had a council in heaven, and this whole physical realm is under judgment because we got misled by bad Elohim, and not many people are 1 called, 2 chosen, and 3 faithful to the Lord Jesus. So there's avoiding, there's Noah's flood, there is Armageddon, and after Armageddon, after the 1,000 years, put in your sickle and reap. And then there was nobody except what they call straggling fugitives who got played with. That's our great, great, great grandparents. That's as old as it is. That's as old as 300 years is. These people that go, oh, we've been here since my great, 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 great grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1889. I'm 67. My dad was born in 1936. My grandfather was born in 1839. So when I go, my great, 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 great grandfather, where would that put me? Even if it's the modern people, where it's 16-year-olds having 16-year-olds, your grandma at 30, not unusual anymore, but it wasn't always like that. Everything is new. There have been numerous floods. The flood of Noah was the only flood where I'm going to kill everything that's not in that boat. And all the humans and all the animals are going to be related to what's on that boat. unless you're a fish. So let's take it from there. So the mud flood without the Bible is, it's going to take you to Atlantis. So here's that, sometimes produce misinformation due to training patterns and the potential for bad actors to manipulate it. So it gives bad misinformation. Chat-GBT can be used by bad actors to generate misinformation. Safeguards for new artificial intelligence must take into account that not all users are well-intended. Some of them want to believe the earth is flat, like it seems, like the Bible teaches. NASA's fake. Well, Chat-GBT's got a problem with that. It can be trusted. What it might get wrong and how to critically assess responses. It's designed to provide useful responses on patterns of data it was trained on. Now, we're going to look a lot at the Las Vegas shooting to see how much everything was tied into and how it kind of reinvigorated the 2011 Gabby Gifford thing, because it's still going on with what happened in Minnesota with someone that was appointed by the man who just was the vice president for the nominee for the United States of America by the Democratic Party. It's crazy. And this Vegas isn't that old.
You just had a clip, Captain Mark Kelly, the husband of Gabby Giffords. He testified before Congress that the AR-15 should be banned. And I wrote an article that 2 weeks later, he tried to buy an AR-15 for himself. And so what are you going to do with guys like this? I mean, they say one thing, and then when it comes to their own personal safety, Mark Kelly wanted an AR-15 for himself.
Well, it's always useful to talk to you at these times, Neil McKay, because it gives us an insight.
So that basically ends the conversation.
No, I'm saying it would just be harder if you had an assault weapons ban for a 64-year-old retired accountant to get hold of a load of assault weapons.
Right. Well, I mean, remember during the assault weapons ban, it's not obvious to me, and during the assault weapons ban, we had the Columbine High School shooting, which was also a horrific event, and there were certainly laws against that. I mean, you have to understand that guns save lives, guns prevent crimes, and you're asking Americans to what? Disarm themselves because of an incident in Las Vegas?
Well, you know, the argument you usually throw back at us during these conversations is that you are better off with a weapon if you come under attack. That is not an argument you can use in this case, because they were being shot at from the 32nd floor with a high-velocity, long-range weapon, and there's no way they could have defended themselves.
I agree with you. I mean, there's no way you could have defended against this. This is a brutal, horrible, criminal act.
So you don't want to do anything. You just think this is one of those things you accept. Well, as the price of freedom.
It's a problem, right? This is the problem living in a free country, is that there's going to be risks involved, and those countries that we refer to as dictatorships or tyrannies are countries where they sort of pre-punish the crimes. You just had a clip, Captain Mark Kelly, the husband of Gabby Giffords. He testified before Congress that the AR-15 should be banned.
So surprise, they're different. They want to be treated different, Hey, look, I found a Bible quiz. It seems like it was pretty easy. What is the meaning of the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25? Preparedness. Let's find another one. Who is the false prophet that works with the beast in Revelation? Ooh. A deceiver performing miracles.
Beast in Revelation 13. A, an angel of light. B, a deceiver performing miracles. C, a hero to the nations. D, a scapegoat. Answer B, a deceiver performing miracles. The false
Let's
prophet
do
in
a couple
Revelation
more.
13:11-15 works alongside the beast, performing great signs and deceiving the inhabitants of the earth. He directs people to worship the first beast and enforces the mark of the beast, playing a key role in end-time deception. Question 24. What does the pouring out of the 7 bowls in Revelation symbolize? A, the healing of nations. B, the outpouring of God's final wrath. C, and the completion of his wrath in the end times. Question.
How does Jesus describe the destruction of Jerusalem? The answer is C. Tragic and foretold event. One more. In Revelation, what does the dragon represent and whom does he pursue? The dragon represents justice. He pursues the wicked. The dragon represents Satan. He is pursuing the woman representing Israel. Is everything B?
You know, the most famous of it is the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or BCCI. And BCCI basically exploded in 1991 and was investigated by the Senate. They found all these ties to arms trafficking, drugs trafficking, organized crime intelligence agencies, sex trafficking of prepubescent children even was something this bank engaged in, and it was just completely covered up. And the CIA had allegedly created that bank, but it operated as a development bank. It's public facing. I guess it's public facing face. Sorry, that's not the most eloquent way to say it, but it framed itself as a development bank and specifically held the reserves of central banks of countries in the global south, like Peru, for example, and was using a lot of that money to facilitate these crimes and all sorts of crazy things. And that type of criminal activity absolutely continues. And because of how our system is set up, it's not prosecuted. White collar crime is never prosecuted, really, in the United States. Definitely not at that.
Huh. Let's see what we got here. So here's the Tucson shooting. This is where she got shot point blank in the back of the head. 18 others were shot. 6 people were killed, including a federal district court chief judge. He was a 22-year-old Tucson man that had been fixated on her. It was at a Safeway. So it was quite a thing. I don't know if too many of you remember it. Single bullet impacted the back of her head. It was resting on her skull when he pulled the trigger. Entered and left right above the eyeball, but she made it. She's okay. Well, she's a little diminished, but she's still fighting the fight, Capable of holding 33 rounds. I didn't know that. But some people don't like guns. I mean, I don't think we should use, I'm not all about defending and going to war and, I'm just not. So let's look at this. Something is manifest. Something has been revealed. Plainly, to inform, signify. Hebrews 9:24. Not made by hands is the holy place that Christ entered into because he saw the copies, the true heaven in the presence. See, the word that we're looking for, Christ has entered not into holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true things, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. And where is that word? Now to appear. It means to, he appeared after Christ's death, he appeared to many. And he told them, I will manifest myself to them. I'm going to disclose myself to certain people. And that's what happens. A council signified to the chief, hey, here's the report. You have to do this now. Brought charges. It's something that is definite. When Christ appeared, it was for that generation, those people who were faithful. Then they had the golden age, ruled with a rod of iron, and now we're figuring it out. And it's time to decide, what does the Bible teach us? I remember it's going on 10 years ago now, the things that we learned, and this was one of the first.
Just a year after the original demonstration line, on December 1st, 1868, the Beach Rheumatic Transit Company would take a 5-year lease of the basement of the Devlin's clothing store. Now Beach had his design, his tunnel builder in Dixon, and the location at 260 Broadway.
Sure.
All he had to do was find a way to legally build his demonstration line. Little did people know that before Beach had permission to build his bigger tunnel at the corner of Warren Street, at the location of 260 Broadway, Beach first built a small pneumatic tube, which was meant to travel mail using pneumatic power. Although the original purpose and intention of this mail tube never came to light, there is a Tribune story from January of 1870 that mentions this smaller tube in the basement of 260 Broadway. The legal finagling by Alfred Beach starts with the construction of the larger tube and the one that we know from the Beach Rheumatic Transit. In May of 1869, the Beach Rheumatic Transit Company was given permission to build the larger tunnel from Warren Street under Broadway down to Murray Street.
Under
This
the
idea
river.
that Beach would build this larger tunnel in order to fit 2 pneumatic tubes inside for sending mail was a false conception. Instead, Beach wanted to build this tunnel big enough to fit passengers inside, a pond, and a grand piano, as well as the walls being beautifully painted in white with wooden upholstery. This room was really gorgeous, and Alfred Beach really had something going for him with the Beach Rheumatic Transit Company and the Warren Street station.
Man, but then they lost it all, and forgot about it until 1911.
22 years. It was instantly apparent to the workers that the tunnel was left in immaculate condition for its age. They even found the car, which was at the dead end of Murray Street, still left in its same spot it was most likely rolled into by the Home Fisher Rifle Company in 1878.
Oh, it's there since the Mudflood. And, when they were cleaning up, digging out, getting us to where we are now, DEI much?
As the word spread, eventually journalists would visit the tunnel, and Stanley Yale Beach, the son of Frederick Beach and grandson of Alfred Beach, would be invited to visit the tunnel. The fame was short-lived, though, and the tunnel entrance from the Warren Street station side of the Beach Rheumatic Transit Tunnel would be sealed for good. A year later, by 1900, the current building, 258 Broadway, would be already...
And then they forgot about it. But they have the same thing in England.
As they claim that the Beach Rheumatic Transit Tunnel still belonged to them. After leaving the tunnel practically abandoned for over 40 years, it is important to note that these people who tried to sue the Degnon Contracting Company had no association with Beach, with Alfred Beach and the original owners of the Beach Rheumatic Transit Company and the tunneling shield. We know based off of pictures of the tunneling shield.
Now, the tunneling shield and the pictures, I think this is a real leftover. and I set it in the dirt, used vibrations or something, and clean it out behind you. They were tunneling, and were they cleaning out from a previous flood? More than likely.
That the brick section of the tunnel was 100% demolished. What the media fails to mention is what happened to Joseph Dixon's cast iron tunnel entrance. Surely if they were demolishing this section, it would be saved too, since it served a historical purpose, being a part of the first underground tunnel in America. The only mentioning of this iron entrance of Dixon's tunnel during the time of demolition comes from one of the Degnon contractors, who refers to Dixon's iron entrance as something that would be more difficult to destroy than it was to originally build. It sounds far-fetched, but this is the only reference.
Doesn't our world seem far-fetched?
Talk about the CIA and other intelligence agencies and whatever else. I don't know who the director of the Central Intelligence Agency is right now in 2023. So I found out. And boy, did I find out. So today we're going to briefly meet Billy Burns. We're going to learn about his buddy, no joke. And then we're actually going to take a huge detour into this whole other rabbit hole that's really interesting. Really, this is a video about the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, not about Bill Burns, the director of the CIA. With Homeboy a decade ago, when he was preparing to leave government and enter the private sector for the first time. And gosh, I gotta figure out my screenshots so they don't get cut off on the side. But anyways, this guy, who we met before when we were researching the Council on Foreign Relations. That's weird. The same dude helped found the Council on Foreign Relations and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, two of the most prominent and important think tanks in the world. Were both founded right around the time of the Federal Reserve and World War I and a lot of stuff. It's also the MacArthur Foundation, who's given almost $25 million to them since '88, including 44 grants for nuclear challenges and human rights. What does that mean? Because that's a lot of money. But wait.
Yeah.
With all this money? I don't know. But I know that they publish books. Not sure how many millions of dollars that costs, but books like A Public Role for the Private Sector. Interesting title, guys. Yes, we're giving very Schwab-y vibes right now. There now exists over 60,000 multinational corporations with more than 450,000 subsidiaries in every corner of the world. In the process, most people believe that multinational corporations deliberately undermine national regulatory systems and drive standards down to the lowest common denominator. Yet, many companies participate in collective efforts to develop. I see where this is going. Public-private partnership.
You're supposed to be playing.
So, a quick summary of what we just learned. Joe Biden recruited the current director of the Central Intelligence Agency straight out of this think tank. Interesting. Score one for think tanks being tied to intelligence agencies. In case we didn't already have ample evidence of those ties. Furthermore, he had been placed at that think tank by a certain dude who has ties to intelligence agencies, as well as a lot of other fucked up shit. Why was he recruiting the directors of said think tanks? I don't know. I have no idea.
What do you
this guy
think?
would have had any connections at that think tank. On how they're spending many millions of dollars every year, but they at least publish a few books.
And the thing is, they always never have enough money.
In the beginning,
this is before we get to the big dive in how the Las Vegas shooting is an obvious artificially intelligent lie thing that people get caught up. This is crazy. And it's that Colbert back on YouTube.
soon, the belief developed that a curved mirror could be held up to the relics to capture their miraculous power and bring them back to the pilgrims' home in whatever far-flung land they hailed from. Now, the mirror was not a mirror like the ones we're used to today. It was a pilgrim badge, and it was one of the few mass-manufactured items of the Middle Ages. They were lucrative products to make. So lucrative, in fact, that the goldsmiths and stamp cutters of Aachen couldn't keep up with the demand. Enter Johannes Gutenberg.
That's right, the guy from the Gutenberg press. Going to take his metal making skills to a new level. And where would they have gotten all those codes without the people that did the Gutenberg when they made the Bible to said, well, we just put chapters and verses in it. We don't know why. We just to make it easier.
That the work was expected to take 5 years, and above all, that the object of this undertaking be kept a secret. Gutenberg and his partners had quite literally entered into a conspiracy. And that conspiracy resulted in this. Now, this may not look like much to you, and you'd be right. This is a pencil sharpener. But the Gutenberg movable type printing press that it's modeled after, now that truly was a work of art. In fact, there's a solid argument to be made that it was one of the most important inventions in human history.
And somehow a gang had a conspiracy to keep it secret and then throw it into the world so they could teach them all about, hey, Rome's the true church, and everybody that doesn't believe in the Trinity should get skinned and burned alive.
Many existing ideas and technologies that went into Gutenberg's creation. The screw press, the manufacture of paper, the idea of woodblock printing, the development of ink. But it took years of careful experimentation to solve the puzzle of how to create a perfect print every time. At first glance, it seems straightforward. The type is arranged in a rectangular container and then beaten with ink balls. The paper is placed in a leather-covered frame called the tympan and covered by a frisket. The tympan is then laid onto the type and fed into a screw press, which is turned to press the type onto the paper. Simple, right? Hardly. In fact, every part of the printing process involved years of laborious experimentation. Finding the right paper to print on, finding the right moisture levels for the paper to absorb the ink, finding the right way to dry the paper, finding an ink that wouldn't run off the metal type, finding the right alloy for casting the type, and on and on and on.
Of the invention of the printing press. Give us some instances of what happened as a consequence of this.
It created almost overnight, it created what we call a nationalism, what in fact, effect was a public. The old manuscript forms were not sufficiently powerful instruments of technology to create publics in the sense that print was able to do. Unified, homogeneous reading publics. Everything that we prize in our Western world in matters of individualism, separatism, and of unique point of view, private judgment, all those
and
things.
all the codes that come from the Bible, you know, and the chapters and verses that those guys, when they had to print it in book style,
like they never had before. For the first time, someone could be reading the same news as someone in the next town over.
Or someone on the other side of the planet.
At the exact same time. The printing press united people like never before, and the result was an explosion in the spread of ideas, the likes of which would not be experienced again for centuries.
Right, until the internet, until now, until your time. What are you going to think about all this?
Stiferous books in his own dreaded Star Chamber. Parliament dissolved the Star Chamber in 1641, but they weren't about to give up censorship of the press. They just wanted to take the power for themselves, and that's exactly what they did. The licensing order of 1643 outlawed the printing, binding, or sale of books except by persons licensed under authority of Parliament.
And the rest is your history. How have they tied it all together? We know the Pizzagate, we know the Epstein people. It's, you know.
You can't open a hotel window, right?
Yeah,
if people
right.
are killing themselves in the room, you hear one gunshot. Okay, well, there's a risk to other people that are staying in the hotel, because what if somebody was cleaning a weapon and went off and went through the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody killed themselves in their room.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody murdered somebody. These are things that warrant investigation, and it just didn't happen. Even if you're going to go up there and check to see if there's going to be a rotting body on the floor that's going to cause issues for insurance and other people that stay at the hotel. Anyway, just sort of laying the framework here for why that makes absolutely no sense that wasn't checked out. But anyway, obviously, later that night, and what do you think? Should I pull the map up here just to kind of show like
sensitize people to it now, because the map is super busy, but it's so important. Like this map is absolutely insane. This is one, even if you know the exact URL, I had to go through Brave, through a VPN. Then I had to find a link on Twitter, on X, somebody that actually had it, and that was the only way that I could pull this map up. But this is the preeminent map. What's that guy's name? Ian Collins? Is that his name?
Carroll.
Carroll.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ian Carroll.
Cancel this clothing company. Yeah.
All shout to that dude. That guy, you said it right. He's a national treasure. But he has a great video on this. We'll throw the link up here, here in the post. But man, this map, like this is it. Like this lays out. If there was ever a jumping off point that I wanted to slide across the desk where I'm like, hey, I don't think that we know everything about the Vegas shooting, right? And people were like, well, I don't know. You know, I would be like, hey, check this map out. Look at this map, and you tell me if this makes any sense. This is a map. So what you're looking at here to sensitize everybody to it, as we zoom out and zoom in, you can see the entire strip here, the Southern Valley. As we zoom in to the concert event, you can see every single 911 call. You can see shootings. You can see all 850 people were injured in the course of this event, either actually through the 60 that were shot and killed, the people that were shot and injured, or in the stampede.
Just give it a little more time. You're going to be blown away by this. This is the worst movie script ever. It didn't happen like this.
60 people injured, 60 people killed. Okay. I want you to think about these numbers. And again, use your skeptical mind here. Just take the information in. Don't think one way or another, and just think to yourself, why would you bring that many rifles? Why wouldn't you bring a couple rifles and a shit ton of ammunition? You would just load up. And again, I always try to put myself into the adversarial position. If I'm trying to think through a tactical problem, I think, what's my enemy going to do? How do I present my enemy with a tactical problem that he can't solve, that I'm going to fuck him up with, right? When I think about this problem and I put myself in a Stephen Paddock's shoes, I don't think to myself, oh yeah, no, just bring a shit ton of rifles and then like put one magazine in them, have a bunch of bump stocks, whatever.
Yeah.
No. If you're thinking about overheating your weapon, or if you're that tactically sound, and by the way, there's no reason to think that Stephen Paddock was this tactically sound. He didn't have any military training. He didn't have anything in his background to suggest that he was just tactical genius. I would never think to bring professionals don't do that. You bring large ammunition stores, and then you bring preloaded. If you're trying to do this quick, man, we do it, and as a common thing when we would load out our helicopters, right? You always have a kick rack, or what we call a.
So this guy is one of the guys that used to work for a big company, and he quit. He's a whistleblower. Both this guy, Green Beret or something, and now they got a show. They're tearing this one up. It's good. They're just getting warmed up.
That speedball was typically, it was like ammo cans, but those weren't full of loose rounds. That's not what you need in a firefight. You need magazines that you can shove into weapons. You need belts of ammunition, and those are all preloaded. So this is not how a professional would conduct this attack. You would not bring 23.
Makes sense. It's probably a good segue to talk about bump stocks. Okay.
Yeah. So because just a quick pause here. So, I mean, do we have a total number of rounds fired? Is that number floating around? I think I missed it.
I'm going to look it up. Let me see.
Yeah. You go ahead and look up total number of rounds. My public school math, right? If we have 23 rifles that are on the floor of this room, and by the way, this is another number you're going to find very interesting. Inside of the room where Stephen Paddock was found dead, and we're going to talk about the room setup, and we're going to talk about the presentations room. 50 spent shells were found. 50. Yeah. Okay. So if he brought 23 rifles in, assuming it's a 30-round magazine, and that's assuming that each one of them has a 30-round magazine, okay? Assuming that he's got a 30-round magazine, for each one of them, that's 690 rounds, okay? So do you know the number total rounds?
It's this Chat-GBT says it was over 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking, I mean, he's reloading something. He's reloading somewhere. You're not ripping all the way through. Yeah.
There are not enough rifles and not enough just single mags in those rifles to just go boom, 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 boom down the line and fire all those rounds off. There just simply is not. The math.
And again,
I'm going to give you a little, because I do want you to, it's Sunday, take a minute. they're going to get into the time where they're talking about people calling in. There's running gangs fighting in the motels and the casinos, that 3 helicopters from the CIA or the Army that had their transponders on, then they turned them off. This is a conspiracy that there's so many. I knew this one was weird, but it's super weird.
Ain't mathin'.
50, yeah, it ain't math. 55 spent shell casings, and these pictures are out there. Like, we're going to show you the pictures. We have them. I got them in my note right here.
Yep. And dude, it's crazy how hard you have to look to find those, because I looked, you can't Google them. You can't just type in, crime scene photos. Some shit will come up, but not the stuff you actually want to see. This is stuff that the media and, the overlord.
I can't share a specific. I want to share a specific thing. I don't have a type of rifles to check on the floor. This one is obviously a bump stock. That does not look like a bump stock at all. That's a scoped
You
rifle.
can even see the handle there to adjust the bumps, the stock settings for shoulder length. You can see it on there. You can see the lever.
And that's what he's talking about here. And again, look at the distinct, like over 1,000 rounds, right? Over 1,000 rounds. These are the rifles that they supposedly picked up and used.
Yeah.
Look at the shell casings. How many shell casings are here?
There's like fucking 6, dude.
Exactly. So this is what I'm talking. So even if your bump stock works just absolutely perfectly and you go through it, he's using different type of magazines out of different type of weapons. Like, stuff happens, man. That's why, as a special operator, and I cringe when I use that, but one of the biggest things you did, it's not good enough for you to be a good shooter. All of our drills were malfunction drills. We're like, hey, you got to clear that malfunction. You better know the difference between type 1, 2, 3, and 4 malfunction.
And you're going to hear Jason Aldean himself as well. Aaron, let me know if for whatever reason when I share this, if it doesn't, you can't hear it.
Yeah, I got you.
Cool. There it is. All right. So I'm going to hit play on this. And then let's see. I'm going to look at the double timestamp again, make sure real fast. Yeah. Okay. You can still see it, right? Single shots.
At 10:06 and 7 seconds, the first volley of automatic gunfire begins. An off-duty officer working the event stated in his report that it sounded like people were shooting at each other. His partner stated, as many others would that night, that it sounded like the shots were coming directly from the main stage area, and it was so loud he would have bet his paycheck that there was an assault team somewhere on the ground.
All right. People leaving. Right there.
Right there.
Dude, first off, you heard a couple of cracks.
That is not a fucking those cracks are the cracks that you're hearing is not it's not the report of the gunshot, it's the bullet breaking the sound that goes by you. Exactly. If it's close enough, a bullet will whiz or it'll buzz. If you ever hear a bullet buzz, you just fucking got away with one.
Yep.
If you ever hear a bullet buzz, if you're ever close enough to hear something buzz by you or vibrate by you, you just almost got fucking shot. When you hear a bullet snap or crack like that, you're typically a little bit further or you're off of the actual angle. When a bullet actually breaks, directly over top of you or to the side of you and it's coming at you, it sounds a little bit different as opposed to when a bullet is like crossing.
Wait, I thought this was a section where they were going to show the helicopters firing. So a little bit more about the
skull and crossbones. Unfortunately, those are fatalities. This is where the actual concert was being held, and you can see some of these like green things right here. This is kind of some of the setup from the stage and all this shit, which is awesome that this person did that. Not just like marking these, but like where the stage is set up. This even says like this was a line dancing spot, all this stuff.
Yeah, this is just a huge parking lot. Like this, it looks completely different now, by the way. Yeah, like all of this is completely different. As a matter of fact, it just changed again. The Tropicana, they just is a huge thing. They just raised the Tropicana. It was a big event. It was actually pretty cool to watch. But they imploded and they brought down the Tropicana. That big open field that you're seeing there, like all of these things, it looks completely different now. But
right, it's where the Las Vegas football team plays.
and these are some of the calls we'll go over later, are these three right here at Sundance Helicopter.
That's important.
Because two of these calls are from the same dude. His name is Alex. You can't hear his last name in the 911 call because it's bleeped out because it's an actual LVMPD YouTube recording. But he calls and reports that his girlfriend says there's an active shooter in the parking lot. He says that she specifically says, and I'll pull it up for us later, that there's an active shooter in the parking. I mean, I can pull it up now, whatever you know, if we think that's best.
Pull it up now.
Okay, cool. Let me get the, I want to make sure I got the right show note here so I'm doing the right thing. But he calls and says that his girlfriend reported a active shooter in the parking lot. And then he calls 911 back later, about 20 minutes later, to say that they're barricaded in the building to hide. Okay, so let me find this for you guys. And there's a lot of body cam footage too, which I love. Okay, here I'm gonna click this one. It's 7 minutes and 8 seconds in. Let me do this real fast here. All right, guys, I gotta kill the screen and then I'll bring it back up.
And I'll tell you, and again, this is yet another thing, and this is the narrative that these are some of the things that we're going to start highlighting here. Is a lot of these 911 calls, they start to say some very weird things. There are some of these 911 calls report small teams of men working together.
They do. Yep.
Small teams. Some people report we talked a little bit about it, and it's way too deep in the weeds to get into. If we spent 5 hours talking about it, but to try to explain to you that even though the MGM owns a shit ton of these properties, there are other small parts of this that are owned completely by other people in the same building. Yeah. There are a couple balconies, there are a couple properties, there are a couple of areas that are owned by other people. And on top of there's even some speculation in some 911 calls that would lead to running gun battles in the streets between teams of operatives, which is highly, and again, you can't verify any of this. You have to dig into it so much. And I don't know who has the time for that. And Ian Carroll, good on you for figuring out at least some of this stuff, but it is highly interesting. Is it 100% true? I don't know. I would have to examine it more, but I'll tell you what, when you corroborate it with a bunch of these 911 calls about active shooters and small teams of men in black clothing and body armor running around with long guns, they're like, well, it was the police. A couple of people on the 911 call are like, it was not the police.
Nope.
They were not the police. I can tell you that much. And it was one of these phone calls, the one that you're about to bring up. Mm-hmm. That guy was a policeman. The guy, it was a Las Vegas police dude that was like, and he was like, hey, my girlfriend's reporting an active shooter here in the thing. So go ahead.
The helicopters.
One of the ones that was in there.
Stupid name. It's McCarran. That is inside the fence at McCarran is where Sundance Helicopter was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just crazy because you could tell at first that as a 911, somebody who's worked 911, there's been a lot of times where people have called me and they're so disoriented, they report things wrong, especially low. All right, guys, here we go.
22, 43, and 48 seconds. 911 emergency, Rodriguez 15978. You need police, fire, or medical.
I'm sorry. It's there's an active shooter at Sundance Helicopter.
Okay. Did you see the shooter?
I'm not there. My girlfriend works there. She's a supervisor. She texted me and said there's a shooter.
Yes, we're aware of that. Okay. Where's your girlfriend now?
I to my knowledge, she's still there, but I was trying to get through to just
Yeah, we have thousands of calls coming in right now, so we are aware of the situation, okay? If your girlfriend calls us, obviously there's a hold on 911, but we're answering the calls as quickly as we can get to them. You said your girlfriend's not injured?
I'm not, I don't know. I called, she told
me. And is she at Sundance Hospital or the helicopter thing, or was she at the festival?
No, she's at Sundance Helicopters. I have no idea what's going on.
Okay.
Which is crazy. She's like, oh yeah, no, we're totally aware. And I think I don't want to put words into the dispatcher's mouth. I think she knows she's talking about the active shooter event.
Yep.
And then as it becomes clear that they're at Sundance, that's on the airport. That is inside the confines of the Las Vegas airport. Sundance Helicopter is on the apron. It's in there where they stage everything. Like, it is a secure facility. I will never call it Harry Reid. That's a fucking stupid name. It's McCarran. That is inside the fence at McCarran is where Sundance Helicopter was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just crazy because you could tell at first that as a 911, somebody who's worked 911, there's been a lot of times where people have called me and they're so disoriented, they report things wrong, especially locations. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee you that this woman thinks that he's misreporting on accident the location where this is, and that she's probably assuming he thinks his girlfriend is reporting what is happening ways away. But he confirms more than once that she said it is happening in the parking lot.
In the
And
parking lot,
interesting
where she
thing-
works. Like
Right.
this is home court. She works there. She
Right,
like
so she
she
knows.
knows where the parking lot is.
Yep.
She knows this is not. And by the way, Mandalay Bay, it is close to the airport. Like it's the desert, guys. Like there is a valley. It ain't that close. It's not so close that you would mistake it, right? Like when you're in Mandalay Bay, you can't really hear planes take off that well. You can see them kind of take off, but you can't really see. It would be really, really hard with everything going on, and like there's masking behind buildings and all this other stuff. It would be super hard to mistake. Like this is the parking lot that we're talking about here, right? Mandalay Bay is over here. It would be super tough, especially with the rounds going the other way. He's shooting out of, if you move your cursor around there, zoom in on the actual Mandalay Bay. Here's one of the things that I was kind of talking about here. You see this building? You see where the guy was actually shooting from? That would be the sound, the report would be masked by the building. It would not be like a straight line, like it's going out. That's not how sound works. You wouldn't be able to mistake it to be so close to where you are at Sunset Helicopters to mistake the sound that's happening in the parking lot where you work. That is just not a thing.
Bro, and not to mention all the fucking noise coming
the
from
flight line.
here.
It's a huge it's a huge international airport.
Yep,
It is huge.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, and I bring this up too, is because of all the helicopter reports that happened that night. And I got some video as well of people who reported helicopters and saying too that the helicopter was firing at the crowd.
That is a big one. There are 3 military style helicopters, and we'll talk about how I'll tell you what we can verify. There were 3 military style helicopters that were flying around in the area. Before the event, they turned their transponders off.
Yep.
After the event, they turned their transponders on.
Yep.
Now, I can't tell you if people were shooting from the helicopters.
That's crazy.
I can't tell you that. Mandalay Bay, it's across the street from New York. Like this is all kind of like in the same area down there on the south end of the street. MGM is across the street. The MGM Grand.
So let's see what we got here.
Personnel that ended up making entry into the room where Stephen Paddock was laying.
Dude, the crazy...
all of these things have just disappeared. They just don't exist.
Yeah. When you are conducting an investigation, there's a level of transparency that you should hold because it lends credibility to your investigation. Okay. An investigation is supposed to be bringing the truth to light. And when you hide things and you make an active attempt to hide things like what Aaron was just talking about, all it does is leave room for speculation, which in turn starts to erode the credibility of your investigation. Police officers know this. This isn't just some fucking mistake they make all the time willy-nilly. Like, this is intentional, in my opinion. And none of these deaths, like I'll keep reading them to you guys, are just like, oh, it's an 89-year-old woman.
So it's like if you can read some of these, like JFK, people just were dying. That Kimberly reported that she was uninjured, described to the media attacks how they were carried out by multiple gunmen who were firing weapons. She said it on a Facebook post that went viral, said multiple gunmen were not just firing weapons in the crowd, but also pursuing and shooting them. A week after posting, she was found dead in bed, 28 years old, in her Apple Valley home.
Who died in her sleep, and you could say, right? So here's Danny Contreras, 35, was killed after being chased by 2 gunmen. His corpse was recovered in an abandoned house after a woman heard a man moaning and called the police. Law enforcement investigated the report and found Contreras dead. Contreras posted on Twitter saying, feeling lucky to be alive. Can't believe I got out of the concert. 2 men are stalking me with guns. The next one, this one's really weird. Kimberly,
I read that one.
Just take a look at it.
Yeah, Ed Bass.
The singer who was on stage when the shooting began died from a seizure during sleep, according to Nashville media. After the massacre and before his death, Allman reportedly told a friend that his meeting with MGM, Las Vegas police, and FBI were strange and complex. The lawyer was privy to information which the federal agency did not disclose. 35-year career. Thank you for your
Steven had been to
time.
the Philippines multiple times, with Mary Lou, and but it's weird that he sends her there alone and then goes to downtown to go fucking shoot up people and do some gambling with a couple of hot Latinas. Part of the investigation too, like the whole arms trafficking thing, which is kind of one of the theories, is that he may have been doing this in the Philippines and that's why he was traveling there. Although obviously the FBI in their investigation says that there is no connection, but that is one of the conspiracy theories. Just going to throw it out there.
Right.
But there is enough evidence in other places without just sticking to conspiracy theories that are weird and things that we should talk about, right? So let's get to some of the people that are involved in this. John Pelletier, okay, was one of these
this
guys.
fucking guy.
Right?
God, I hate this fucking dude. John Pelletier, I hope you're listening right now, and I hope you're getting into a car accident that's giving you AIDS and fucking herpes, you fucking piece of shit.
That's right. Yeah, dude. So here's the weird thing. I'm just going to say it up front. Bluff. Bottom line up front. John Pelletier was a captain in charge of Las Vegas Metro PD area, Convention Center area. They're one of 10 area commands throughout Las Vegas, okay? John Pelletier.
Is that the guy from Maui? Anyway, they go through a bunch of people here. I don't want to keep you forever.
This is one of those situations where armed American citizens, your Second Amendment rights, stood up against the man, and the man backed down. And then Joseph Lombardo was a part of that decision to de-escalate, essentially, and not enforce the law, technically, right, with Clive and Bundy and the people that were out there, his supporters with him. So he was involved in this.
That was kind of
He
a
was
rabbit
involved-
trail.
Victorino's primary campaign donors was Alexander and Baldwin, which is a major land development company in Hawaii, specifically there in Maui. And this guy also, the A and B, Alexander Baldwin, they made donations to Josh Green as well, who was the governor of Hawaii during the Lahaina fires. And Josh Green got a lot of flack about not protecting all of that land, that private land that people owned, and all these real estate investors came in and started taking from them. Anyway, so there's that. He became the police chief there in Maui, and then Joseph Lombardo eventually became the governor of Nevada. Really, really strange. Probably one of the
You
more.
can't say Nevada though. You have to say Nevada.
Is it Nevada?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
and people will fucking get so pissed at you. They'll be like, "It's not Nevada. What is that?" Like, where John Pelletier? I hope he's getting in the same accident. Can't comprehend infinity appropriately.
There were some things I think I missed, but I would encourage you to go back and give it a listen.
Human on the face of this planet, homie.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
fuck off.
Absolutely. So no, I just wanted to point all these things out. There's these people, there's conflicts of interest, there's people that are involved in multiple sketchy things.
Orange. It reminds me of Rip It's back in the day, homie. Like this Aaron _loves_ America. You can find me. Just Google
guy, right? To do this shit.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate it. I think what we can't do is forget the Bible and that we serve Christ and don't get caught up in the world. It's obvious now they're out to get you. The Bible doesn't teach it doesn't end. We're reading the book of Revelation the way it's supposed to, and it doesn't end with us changing the world and not getting encompassed about while they're trying to kill the saints. So all of this hope, maybe we have a window to where you can find a safe place to live. But if you think that this is nothing, that it's all going to keep going on like, well, everybody lived these conspiracies all their life and nothing's new. This isn't it coming to an end. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not next week. It ends in 2046. 2038 is the big deal, the computers. 2030, there's a lot going on. Don't fall asleep. Stay in scripture. Love the Lord. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else because we know we're called, chosen, and faithful. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Knockman. Basically, adios, amigo.